The car was moving along the highway at high speed. The sun was already going down, painting everything around with golden light. The millionaire, tired after a whole day of meeting negotiations, sat at the wheel, immersed in his thoughts. He thought about business, about deals, about the fact that tomorrow will be even more difficult. Outside the window, trees and the lights of rare cars flashed, but his attention was focused on the phone screen and a list of tasks that needed to be solved. Suddenly, a sharp temple of the brakes. He only had time to look up when a car suddenly jumped out in front of him, and a collision became inevitable. Everything happened so quickly that the brain did not have time to comprehend what was happening. The grinding of metal, the splash of breaking glass, the screams of passers-by, the temple of tires. Everything was mixed up in a terrible symphony of disaster. The car rolled over several times, like a toy that someone had thrown into the air. The millionaire felt a strong blow. Consciousness began to leave his body. When it became quiet around, the world seemed to freeze. Smoke and dust hung in the air, and people around did not know where to start. The car was crushed, the doors jammed, and the first who ran up looked at the consequences of the accident with horror. He was lying in the cabin, showing no signs of life. His heart was beating weakly, there was almost no breathing, and the doctors who arrived a few minutes later were forced to. Admittedly, there is little chance. They pulled him out carefully, trying not to aggravate the injuries while calling resuscitation. A crowd gathered at the scene of the accident. People tried to help. Someone was holding a phone and filming everything that was happening. Someone just stood there, seized with horror. But among all those present were two girls, twin sisters, who were barely 10 years old. They accidentally. We ended up nearby, returning home from an orphanage. Their small hands trembled, but their hearts were filled with extraordinary excitement. They saw how people were fighting for the life of an adult man, how doctors were trying to revive him, and suddenly they felt that they must do something. They came closer, quietly looking at each other. The eldest, a little more decisively, said to her sister, "We can help. We have to try." Their eyes sparkled with determination, despite the fear. They did not understand all the medical subtleties, but they knew one thing. Sometimes the power of the heart can work a miracle when it seemed that there was no way out. Doctors continued to work, monitoring every movement of the patient. The girls stood nearby, praying quietly, whispering words of encouragement, like little angels sent by fate. Their pure faith and genuine concern seemed to be felt even through the noise of the ambulance, through the shouts and chaos. They held each other's hands, combining the power of their small but incredibly strong hearts. And something in this presence seemed to change the atmosphere around. In the midst of the chaos, their invisible energy and love created a strange, almost magical feeling. The doctors noticed this and looked at each other in surprise. Despite their professionalism, sometimes there are moments that cannot be explained rationally. The patient's heart seemed to hear these invisible streams of warmth and care. It was at the moment when everyone was already starting to lose hope that a strange thing happened. The millionaire, who was on the verge of life and death, barely moved his fingers. Doctors were surprised, checking the pulse and breathing. The girls, noticing this movement, clenched their hands even tighter, continuing to whisper their quiet words of support. They could not have known that their mere presence and sincere faith had begun to change the course of events. Everything around seemed to be frozen. People stopped screaming. The wind seemed to have died down, and time slowed down. And although the millionaire had not yet fully recovered, a small miracle had already happened. He showed the first signs of life, barely noticeable, but incredibly significant. This scene was the beginning of something amazing. No one understood then that these two orphan twins would become the miracle that would save the life of the billionaire and forever change their destinies. At this moment, the little heart showed strength that adults could only dream of. Do you want me to continue the second scene with 700 words right away? When the doctors took the millionaire on a stretcher to the hospital, the girls were left standing by the side of the road. Their small figures seemed tiny against the chaos and crushed metal, but inside them burned an amazing determination. They knew that their role in this story was not over yet. They looked at each other, and the eldest said quietly, "We have to go with him. We cannot leave him alone." None of them had any experience of being in the hospital, but an inner voice told me that there, among the doctors and white walls, they will be able to do something important. They quietly ran after the ambulance. Their feet touched the ground with light steps, but their hearts beat so loudly, as if they were carrying the whole world on their backs. Entering the admission department, they saw doctors busy saving lives. White coats, monitors with flashing numbers, the smell of antiseptic. All this was created by someone else, cold and frightening. But the girls were not confused. They found a corner of the wall and sat down on the floor. The older one put her hand on the younger one's knee and whispered, "We can help. We have to believe." They closed their eyes, joined their hands, and began to speak quietly the words that they had invented for themselves, words of support, prayer, and hope. Each word was like a small ray of light breaking through the darkness. At this time, doctors were struggling with the critical condition of the millionaire. His heart was weak, his lungs could not cope, and every breath was difficult. The monitors beeped, recording a dangerous drop in pressure. But even in the midst of the professional struggle for life, something unusual was happening. The air around the girls seemed to vibrate with their internal energy. It was something immaterial that could not be measured by instruments, but something that was felt by the heart. Hours passed. The girls did not move from that place, and they continued to sit, holding hands, quietly whispering words of support. Sometimes their eyes filled with tears, but they did not look away, did not let fear overshadow their determination. The doctors noticed their presence at first with slight bewilderment, and then with quiet surprise. In this small presence, full of sincere concern, there was an extraordinary power. The eldest sister picked up eyes to the monitors and quietly said to the youngest, "Look, he moved a little." The youngest bent down with a sinking heart, carefully observing every detail. Yes, it was a barely noticeable movement, but it gave them incredible hope. Their hearts beat even faster. They understood that their presence really made a difference. The doctor, passing by, looked at the girls and grinned. "What are these little angels?" Critical patient felt the air differently, so even tension and fear slowly receded before their quiet, decisive force. The nights in the hospital dragged on slowly. The girls did not go home, their parents were not around, and no one knew who they were. But for them, one thing was most important, a millionaire. They brought with them warmth, attention, and faith that seemed to penetrate the walls of the hospital. Every quiet word, every touch of hand to hand became part of the invisible process that animates the body and the spirit of a seriously wounded person. And at some point, the miracle began to manifest itself gradually. The millionaire began to react to external stimuli. His eyes opened slightly, his fingers moved. His breathing gradually became more even. The doctors did their best, following the protocols, but there was no denying it. Here, among the white walls and the sounds of the monitors, something immaterial, spiritual intervened in the course of events. The girls watched this with delight and quiet joy. The eldest whispered, "See, we did it." The younger one nodded, and a feeling of a small victory flashed between them, as if they had brought their own piece of light into someone else's fate. Their determination, courage, and pure heart became a bridge between life and death. And now even the doctors began to feel that their work is impossible without something more than medical technology. At that moment, amidst the monotonous hum of monitors and the footsteps of the medical staff, the two orphan girls realized that their miracle was just beginning. They became not just witnesses of the event, but a part of it, a living thread of hope and power that will change the fate of a person forever. If you want, I can jump straight to the third scene at 500 words and finish the story. A few days passed, and the millionaire's condition gradually stabilized. He was still in the hospital, connected to many tubes and monitors, but doctors could already say that his life was out of danger. Twin girls sat next to him every day, bringing warmth and light to his difficult stay. Their small hands would sometimes gently touch him, whispering words of encouragement and faith, and it seemed that their energy was revitalizing not only the body but also the soul. One morning, the millionaire opened his eyes for the first time in days. His gaze was faint, but he could already discern the awareness of what was happening. The first thing he saw was two girls sitting next to them with their hands clasped in anticipation of a miracle. Their faces shone with sincere excitement and care. The millionaire tried to smile, but his lips were trembling, and he was not yet strong enough. However, at that moment, something inside him clicked. He realized that it was these little angels who were there when he. It seemed that there was no hope. He softly uttered a word that sounded in a faint whisper. "You girls are frightened, but with hope." Looked at him, not knowing what he was going to say. The millionaire tried to sit down, feeling incredible relief and joy. The doctors who observed the process were shocked. Progress was faster than expected. They knew that medical care played a huge role, but it was obvious that something intangible, the presence of these two little girls, were speeding up their recovery. The older sister stretched out her hand, helping him to stand up carefully, while the younger sister held his shoulder, maintaining his balance. The millionaire could not hold back tears when he felt this sincere concern. He never believed in miracles, believing that wealth and the authorities decide everything. But now in front of him were two orphan girls, whose love and purity of heart had saved his life. At that moment, he realized that real strength is not in money, but in sincere care and kindness. After he recovered a bit, the millionaire wanted to know more about the girls. He asked their names, where they came from, and how their fate led them to the side of the road at that moment. They told about their orphanage, about how tried to help each other, and how they felt the need to help a stranger. The millionaire listened, amazed at their maturity and incredible spiritual strength for such a young age. A few days later, he officially left the hospital, but could not leave the girls aside. He decided to take them under their guardianship, to provide them with the education, care, and love that they lacked so much. In his life, there was a complete rethinking of values. Little orphans have become his miracle, a symbol of hope and love, which can change the fate of even the most rich and powerful people. From that day on, the lives of all three changed forever. The millionaire realized that the true miracle is not money, nor power, nor status, but the ability to sincerely care and love. And for the girls, this meeting was the beginning of a new life, full of security, warmth, and the opportunity to express their hearts. So, in the midst of quiet joy and gratitude, they all found each other, creating an indescribable bond that will forever remain in their lives.